Monday morning, a man named Alan Belmont is put in charge by J. Edgar Hoover of the whole investigation. And the possibility exists that that memo turned into North Dakota, that it in fact was New Orleans. That's just a possibility. Because where we're going with this is that we believe that very possibly a legend was being created in North Dakota for a potential assassination attempt in the region. And of course that's really speculating and going out on a limb. But here's what developed. I was reading a book called The Man Who Knew Too Much by a man named Dick Russell. And he's describing a double agent, double CIA agent, named Richard Case Nagel, who was stationed with Oswald in Japan at Tsuji and has access to all the U-2 flight data. And they're just kind of in each other's lives, but Nagel is a double agent. When they get back to the United States, Nagel and Oswald infiltrate an anti-Castro Cuban cell in New Orleans in August of 1963, a month before JFK comes to Grand Forks. And this scene is portrayed in the movie JFK, and all these Cubans are sitting around, and maybe some of you remember LHO, or Lee Harvey Oswald is sweating, and you can tell he's really uneasy about the discussion. You can't tell whether Richard Case Nagel is there or not, at least I can. The plot at that point is hatched to kill Kennedy at the end of September. So I'm reading this, and it appears in a number of places in the book, The Man Who Knew Too Much, the end of September, in fact, specifically between September 24th and 29th, 1960. So I go back to some reference, and because I'm thinking, when did I see Kennedy in Grand Forks? Turns out it was September 25th, so now I'm thinking, why were those doors open? And of course, it's a real leap to suggest that there was anything going on here, but you know, you can't help but going there a little bit. Well, as this is happening in August of '63 and so on, the Senate Internal Security Committee of Senator James Eastland is questioning a man named Abba Schwartz of the U.S. State Department in August of '64, after the assassination, concerning his knowledge of Oswald's State Department file. Mr. Schwartz, on 2 occasions during the hearing, denied knowing about any communist activity of Lee Harvey Oswald in North Dakota. It's interesting to note that the Senate Internal Security Subcommittee Chief Counsel questioning Schwartz was Julian Sauerwein. Sauerwein appears to be a part of a larger agenda when we consider he was an active player in the so-called Bayo Pauli raid on Cuba. We must ask if Sauerwein's politics help explain the question asked of him by Schwartz about the reference to Schwartz's possible knowledge of Oswald's communist activity in North Dakota. Do we simply dismiss this inquiry by Sauerwein as an innocent query about Alma Cole's letter to LBJ on December 11, 1963? In this letter, she tells LBJ about her son playing with an Oswald-like person in 1953. Do we also assume that Sauerwein was misled by Elaine Mosby's possible UPI typo, and that he was only repeating the misunderstanding of New Orleans as North Dakota? Did Sauerwein believe Mosby's story that Oswald found Marx's Das Kapital on a library shelf in North Dakota in 1953? Do these beliefs explain Sauerwein asking Schwartz if all that information was in Oswald's State Department file? Maybe. Are there other reasons to believe North Dakota would be a fertile ground to create an Oswald legend? Well, there seem to be. Richard Case Nagel, on September 20th, 5 days before JFK gets to Grand Forks, is ordered by the Russians to assassinate Oswald. Remember, he's a double agent. The Russians conclusion, after watching Oswald during his defection and so on, that there's more to him than they realize, and that they are going to be blamed for the assassination of JFK in order to instigate a first strike on the Soviet Union or an attack on Cuba. So Richard Case Nagel makes his way to the Texas-Mexican border, and he's about to cross into Mexico in El Paso on his way to Mexico City. He's going to rendezvous with Oswald and kill him. He loses contact with his handler at that point, and he smells something that isn't quite right. Like maybe he's in the process of being framed, because he knows about the plot. He sends, on September 17th, a memo to J. Edgar Hoover saying that there is a plot that has hatched in New Orleans at the end of September, for the end of September 63. No response. That's part of the reason he feels spooked, because the FBI isn't getting to him. So he walks into a bank in downtown El Paso and engages in a mock robbery. The tellers don't know it because he starts shooting and puts 2 bullets in the ceiling, walks out the door, sits down on the curb, and waits to be arrested. In his mind, he needed to stop the assassination. At this point, he doesn't know where it's going to be. In fact, he kind of thinks Washington, D.C. He doesn't know that JFK is headed across the United States on a conservation tour. So that's on the 20th. And on the 20th, I believe that if there was anything that was going to happen here on the 25th, it was aborted. Now, I believe it was the 3rd time that an abort of an attempt had taken place. The first time was in April in Los Angeles, in Tampa in June. At the last minute, plots are uncovered. Grand Forks, the 3rd one. The 4th one in Chicago. JFK is on his way to see the Army-Navy game, and 2 assassins are actually arrested with rifles, and Kennedy doesn't even leave the White House. A black Secret Service agent who was basically destroyed after he blew the cover on that attempted plot tells the story in a new book about what he went through trying to convince his fellow Secret Service that this was going to happen, and so he prevented it. So enough about Elaine Mosby and Richard Case Nagel. Now, another piece of the research that was quite amazing when this came about is titled 3 Gunshots of Life. You heard Jim talk this morning a little bit about Life magazine. There was a picture of Oswald standing in the backyard with a rifle and so on. When he was showing that picture in the Dallas Police Department, he said, "That's not me, it's my head on somebody else's body." Well, I went to New York, to make a long story short, in 2000. I located the wife of a life executive who had passed away in '95. And I recorded a 6-hour conversation with her, and as crazy as it might seem, I thought that there was a possibility that since Life magazine bought the film on Saturday after the assassination for about $150,000, which was, whatever that is in today's dollars, it was big money. They got it. Like Jim said this morning, they flew the film to the National Photo Interpretation Lab in Virginia and came up with the idea that there were 6 to 8 shots, 7 to 10, whatever. Well, Life magazine had the film soon after. Did Life magazine possibly engage in the redesign of the film? There was a man at Life magazine named Ed Thompson, and he had been hired by Henry Luce, the publisher of Life magazine, from the time it started back in the 1930s, because of his ability to make composite photos. When he was at the Milwaukee Sentinel Journal, Henry Luce, the owner of Life, said, "I want this guy because time somebody is using photos in newspapers that you can't tell whether or not they have been composited. This guy has a technique to composite photos